Hey kiddies, it's Triple Feature Tuesday once again, and this week we're going to look at the different flavors of Red Harvest.
It's all just a little bit of history repeating.
The prolific and influential mystery detective story writer Dashiell Hammett wrote this one novel, Red Harvest, which features the Continental Op, as in the operative of the Continental Agency, which was Dashiell Hammett's version of the Pinkerton Detective Agency, as he is sent to this kind of nothing town in which there are two rival gangs that are fighting over this, nothing town. And the Continental Op takes it upon himself to pit both gangs against each other in the hopes of fun and profit. And this story has been adapted into film 3 different times, and each time in a purportedly different actiony type of genre. What's fun is that in all 3 of these, they basically have almost the exact same story structure and characters, because it's not like we're taking a themes or a story. No, we're taking the entire story and characters and repeating them 3 times. And in terms of triple feature parties, this is sort of an endurance challenge that I don't recommend. This is more just an interesting combination of movies. Though about 2 weeks ago, I did watch all 3 of these in one sitting. And so in each of these versions of Red Harvest, a main character that is unnamed or has a completely fake alias is traveling on a fairly deserted road, comes to a fork in the road, randomly picks one direction, and in that direction there's a town. In the town there's a rival gang. He, being the baddest ass of the world, pits each gang against each other and tries to squeak away with profit. But in the end, he gets a little too embroiled in the lives of the characters and ends up getting his ass kicked and leaving with basically just the same amount of money. I'm sorry, spoiler alert for 3 movies, the youngest of which is over 20 years old. So our menu is going to include Akira Kurosawa's Yojimbo, Sergio Leone's Fistful of Dollars, and Walter Hill's Last Man Standing. Now, I'm not going to go into all the details of all 3 of these movies because, like I just said, I just told you the whole story. But the flavoring is interesting because they take place different genres, different decades of production, different time periods that they're set in. So really, it's basically up to you what type of thing that you like to do. So Akira Kurosawa's Yojimbo stars Toshiro Mifune as our man with no name. The name he gives is something like Kuwabatake Sanjuro, which roughly translates to Mulberry Bush 40, which I forget if the 40 is like supposedly what his name is or just some other number that randomly popped into his head, but it's a completely fake name. He is the fastest man with a sword and proves it often and to great effect. Toshiro Mifune just looks really good, all gruffy as this Ronin that wanders into town as like just the biggest badass. Like you can tell he is cooler than everybody else because he always has his arms kind of across his chest, but like inside his robes, as opposed to like the hands only come out of the sleeves when he's about to, mess people up. But I was very pleasantly surprised that in all 3 of these, the music is very distinct and memorable for each movie. In this one, the music is by Masaru Sato, and the music feels fairly modern for a period piece because it's in the Edo period, I think, is the time of the samurais. Please feel free to correct me, and apologies for the inaccuracy. But it's predominantly all sword fights throughout the entire film, except there is one guy with a revolver, which is kind of interesting, where you see kind of like the future is kind of sneaking in to this one. And that a little bit of that does happen in A Fistful of Dollars, the Sergio Leone cowboy version of the story, which stars Clint Eastwood as the man with no name, who would later be purported to be the protagonist of both A Few Dollars More and The Good, the Bad, the Ugly. Don't get me wrong, Clint Eastwood is the main character of all of those 3 films, but you can tell that they really wasn't intended to be the same character throughout the whole thing. There's many distinctions and names attributed to the other two characters. But you know what? Why not? We'll just pretend they were all fake names and he doesn't have a name because it's cooler that way. But he is on his donkey riding into town after picking the choice of the fork in the road, and kills a whole bunch of people to ingratiate himself into the criminality of the town. That's the thing that always kind of amuses me about all three of these movies, is that he just the guy shows up and murders people, and that ends up, ingratiating him not only to the opposing gang, which you would assume, but he almost always ends up working for the gang that employs the people that he kills to as his resume to be the baddest ass of the town. In this one, it's like I said, it's cowboys. It's set on I think it's in Mexico, but like close to the Mexican-American border, or vice versa. It is close to the Mexican-American border, but it might actually be in the United States. And in this one, the modernity that's kind of creeping in is you see a few guys with semi-automatic pistols as opposed to the wheel six-shooter guns that most of the cowboys have. And man, Clint just looks awesome in this movie. He just very cool, calm, and collected. Toshiro Mifune, by contrast, is a bit more excitable, and you can tell Toshiro Mifune thinks everybody's beneath him, and Clint Eastwood thinks everybody's beneath him too, but he's just very quieter about it, where there's just there's more brashness to Toshiro Mifune, which is, again, you will find the version of this movie that you like the best. And in this one, Fistful of Dollars, we have Sergio Leone doing the music and beginning the triptych of musical screeching that would culminate in the Good, the Bad, the Ugly theme. And by screeching, I mean lovingly. It is just a very high-pitched, fun, westerny soundtrack. And finally, we have Walter Hill's Last Man Standing, soundtrack by Ry Cooder. And again, this one, just very pleasantly surprised to see how much that was really jumping out at me as I was watching it. In this one, Bruce Willis plays John Smith, who is down on his luck gangster, because this time it is the 1920s era Prohibition gangster. So we got a lot of good fedoras, really nice suits. Our revolvers have been replaced with semi-automatic pistols and Thompson machine guns. Unfortunately, it doesn't exactly work, because whereas you look at Yojimbo, it's a samurai movie. You look at Fistful of Dollars, it's a cowboy movie. This Last Man Standing, it's set in the 20s. They're dressed for that part, but it takes place in a desolate western town. So you got guys that look like Elliot Ness or Al Capone walking into bars through batwing doors, and everything is made out of wood. It's just, I'm not saying they should have set it in Chicago or New York, because that would just be part of the story, is the isolation and the fact that these two gangs are fighting to the death over nothing. But you needed to have it just be a little bit more urban to really pull the thing off. Which is not to say that the people involved aren't up to it. Walter Hill, who gave us The Warriors, 48 Hours, The Long Riders, he's just always great with the action. Bruce Willis is just really gruff and evil. And ironically, of the three, he seems to be more emotionally invested in helping people than Clint Eastwood or Toshiro Mifune. But we also have David Patrick Kelly, also from The Warriors, as our head Irish gangster, who employs the town's resident badass Hickey, played by Christopher Walken, with an even more gravelly, raspier voice. Supposedly Hickey got his vocal cords injured previously, or when he was a kid, and so now he talks even more Christopher Walken-y. So yes, on the one hand, that's silly, but on the other hand, he doesn't dance in the film, so, take your victories where you can. All three of the movies do have, a resident badass, the rival to your man with no name. In the first, in Yojimbo, I forget the character's name, but he is the one using the revolver. Fistful of Dollars, it's Ramon Roja with his rifle, and it makes Clint Eastwood have to use a makeshift bulletproof vest. Last Man Standing, it's like it's so close to being the equal of Yojimbo or Fistful of Dollars, but it just, I don't know. It doesn't pass the who cares test as well as the prior two films. Despite, again, a lot of good people in it. Bruce Dern is in there. William Anderson is playing a kooky guy. It's got a young Michael Imperioli and a young Leslie Mann. I did never recognize that was her because, she got famous afterwards. But it's not bad. But because it's not great like the other two are, it makes me think that we need to redo it again. And I was thinking about how you would. And so if you're an actor in Japan, at some point you're going to play a samurai. That's just, there's just so many of those movies that's the thing that you're going to do. If you were a working actor in like the 40s, 50s, or 60s, you're going to star in a Western at some point. And so I think we need to do Red Harvest as a superhero movie or a comic book movie with superpowers, because that is the thing now, where even like 5 years ago, it would be kind of funny where you would see a bunch of people that you saw in a superhero movie be in a drama movie altogether, but not playing the same characters or vice versa. But now everybody is in them. Everybody has to do a superhero movie at some point. And so now we need to have some sort of situation where a smart, savvy, superpowered guy comes in and pits two rival super teams against each other. And I think it's got to be sort of like the old 80s cartoon setups, like G.I. Joe or Transformers, where there's like this one town and there's the good superpowered people and the bad superpowered people, and they keep fighting each other every week. And regardless of how much everything is destroyed, the town always seems to be completely rebuilt by the next week's adventure. So we need somebody like, maybe it'll be like a superhero shows up and then later reveals to be Loki or something. And he was messing around with everybody and, of course, gets his ass kicked and leaves the town with, basically nothing. But that's what we got to do, because it's like Last Man Standing is a good placeholder. It's not a bad movie, but it's not the equal of Fistful of Dollars or Yojimbo. So start working on your versions of the script, and we'll send it off to Kevin Feige to see what we can do with that. And I'll see you guys next week.